My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 41 years old now, and the last time I saw my parents before Grandma's funeral was the day they left me on her porch at 8 years old, with nothing but a plastic grocery bag holding 2 pairs of socks and a half-eaten box of animal crackers. I remember the smell of rain on that old wooden step, the way the screen door creaked when Grandma Eleanor opened it, and how she didn't even raise her voice. She just pulled me inside, wrapped me in one of her big wool cardigans that smelled like lavender and coffee, and whispered, "Well, baby girl, looks like it's you and me now." That was 33 years ago. Life with Grandma wasn't perfect, but it was steady. She lived in the same white clapboard house on Maple Street that her father built in 1947. The floors creaked in the same 3 places no matter how many times she had them fixed. Every morning she made oatmeal with a pinch of brown sugar and a pat of butter, and every evening we sat on the back porch watching the fireflies while she told me stories about her own mother, who had run a small textile mill during the war and turned it into something much bigger. I never knew how big until much later. Grandma never bragged. She just worked hard, paid her bills on time, and loved me like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. I grew up, went to community college, became a high school counselor so I could help kids who felt as lost as I once did. I never married. Trust issues run deep when your own parents treat you like luggage. But I had a quiet, good life. Grandma and I would meet for Sunday dinners, her famous meatloaf and my store-bought apple pie. She'd pat my hand and say, "You turned out better than they ever deserved, Clara." We laughed about it sometimes. The pain had softened into something I could carry without it crushing me. Then, 6 weeks ago, Grandma had a stroke. She was gone in 2 days. The house filled with the scent of lilies and 2 sweet casseroles from neighbors who had known her for 50 years. I handled the arrangements the way she would have wanted, simple service, no fuss, just the people who actually loved her. The morning of the funeral, the church smelled of polished wood and fresh-cut flowers. I stood at the front pew in the navy dress Grandma bought me for my college graduation, the one she always said made my eyes look like the sea. I was reading the final hymn number from the bulletin when the heavy oak doors at the back creaked open. 2 people walked in late. My stomach dropped before my mind even caught up. Mom's hair was dyed too dark, like she was still trying to look 30. Dad had put on weight and wore a suit that pulled tight across his belly. They didn't look at me. They walked straight to the front, eyes scanning the crowd, then the casket, then the simple program in their hands. Mom leaned over and whispered something to Dad. I caught the word "will," and the way her fingers tightened on his arm like she was calculating already. They sat 2 rows behind me. I could smell Mom's heavy rose perfume, the same one she used to wear when she'd come home drunk and promised tomorrow would be different. My hands started to shake so badly I had to fold the bulletin in half. I told myself I was imagining things. People show up at funerals for all kinds of reasons. Maybe guilt, maybe curiosity. But when the pastor asked if anyone wanted to speak, Dad stood up slowly, cleared his throat, and said in that smooth, practiced voice I hadn't heard in 33 years, "Eleanor was like a mother to us too, and we know she would have wanted her only son to handle her affairs." The church went still. I felt the first real crack in my chest, the kind that doesn't show on the outside but changes everything on the inside. I sat there frozen while Dad kept talking, painting this picture of a devoted son who had only stayed away because of complicated family dynamics. His voice was calm, almost reverent, the same tone he used when he used to promise my mother he'd stop gambling. Grandma's old friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Mrs. Hargrove from next door clutched her purse tighter. I could hear the faint ticking of the old church clock above the altar, each second stretching like it knew something was wrong. After the service, everyone moved to the fellowship hall for coffee and ham sandwiches. The smell of percolating coffee mixed with the damp wool of winter coats. I stood near the window trying to breathe when Mom appeared beside me. She smelled exactly like I remembered, rose perfume and cigarettes. "Clara," she said softly, touching my arm with cold fingers. "You look so grown up. Your grandmother did a fine job with you, didn't she?" I pulled away gently. "She did." Dad joined us, holding a paper plate with a slice of lemon cake. "We need to talk about the estate, sweetheart. Your grandma had some valuable property. We're her only blood relatives besides you. It's only right we sit down as a family." Family. The word tasted like rust in my mouth. That evening, back at Grandma's house, the house that still carried her scent of lavender sachets and lemon polish, I found the first real clue. I was going through her desk drawer looking for the funeral guest book when I noticed a folder labeled Legal, Last Will and Testament, updated 2022. Inside were copies of her will. But there was also a letter, handwritten in Grandma's shaky but strong script, dated just 3 months before her stroke. It read, "To my dear Clara, if anything happens to me, do not let your parents near my affairs. They have tried twice before to have me declared incompetent. They want the money, not me. The house, the investments, everything I built after your grandfather passed. It's for you. You earned it with every night you stayed when they didn't. Love, Grandma." My hands trembled as I read it again. $80 million. I had known she was comfortable, but not like this. She had quietly turned her family's old mill land and smart investments into a fortune she never flaunted. And my parents had already tried to steal it once. The next morning, they showed up unannounced. Mom carried a bakery box of donuts like a peace offering. Dad had printed documents from his briefcase, papers claiming Grandma had promised him a share years ago. "We're not here to fight," Dad said, sitting at her old oak kitchen table where I used to do homework. The morning light caught the dust motes in the air. "But blood is blood, Clara. You can't keep everything from us. Your mother and I have struggled. We made mistakes. Sure, but we're still your parents." I poured coffee with steady hands even though my heart was racing. "You left me here when I was 8. You didn't call. You didn't write. Grandma raised me. She paid for my braces, my school trips, my college. Where were you when I had appendicitis at 12? Mom's eyes filled with tears that looked practiced. "We were young, confused. We thought she could give you a better life. We regret it every day." But I saw the way Dad's eyes kept drifting toward the folder I had left on the counter. The one with the will. Later that afternoon, while I was in the backyard hanging laundry the way Grandma taught me, I heard them in the kitchen whispering. Mom's voice. "The lawyer said if we contest it quickly before she probates, we might have a chance. Emotional distress, undue influence. She was old after all." I stood there with wet sheets in my hands, the cold March wind biting my cheeks, and felt something shift inside me. Not rage exactly, but a clear, cold understanding. They hadn't come for me. They had come for the money, and they were willing to drag Grandma's name through the mud at her own funeral to get it. That night I called Grandma's lawyer, Mr. Whitaker, the one she trusted for 40 years. His voice was kind but firm. "Clara, your grandmother was very clear. The will is ironclad, but they will try. Be prepared." I didn't sleep much. Instead, I sat in Grandma's rocking chair, wrapped in her cardigan, listening to the house settle around me. The betrayal tasted bitter, like old coffee left too long on the stove. But beneath it was something else, resolve. The next day I made copies of everything. The letter, the will, old emails where they had pressured her before. I met with Mr. Whitaker and started the paperwork to protect what Grandma wanted protected. The days after the funeral blurred into a quiet kind of war. I didn't scream or cry in front of them. I simply handed my parents the letter Grandma had written, watching their faces as they read her clear, steady handwriting. Mom's mouth tightened into a thin line. Dad tried to laugh it off at first, saying, "She was old, Clara. People get paranoid when they're sick." But Mr. Whitaker was already one step ahead. Within a week, my parents filed to contest the will, claiming undue influence and that I had isolated Grandma from them. The smell of fresh ink on legal papers filled my kitchen as I sat reading their claims late one night, the lamp casting long shadows across the wooden table where Grandma and I once played cards. The public part came faster than I expected. Word spread through our small town the way it always does. Quietly at first, then like wildfire at the grocery store, the post office, and the diner on Main Street. People who had known Grandma for decades started calling me. Mrs. Hargrove brought over a casserole and said, "We all saw how they looked at that funeral, honey. Like vultures." Old Mr. Reynolds from the hardware store stopped me on the sidewalk and shook his head. "Your grandma built that money with her own 2 hands after your grandfather died. She didn't owe them a dime." At the reading of the will in Mr. Whitaker's office, the tension was thick enough to taste. Like metal and old regrets. My parents sat across the heavy oak table, Dad drumming his fingers nervously, Mom clutching a tissue she never used. When the lawyer read Grandma's clear instructions, that everything, the house, the investments, the entire $80 million estate, was left solely to me, the room went silent except for the ticking clock on the wall. Dad exploded first. "This is theft. She was manipulated." His voice cracked with real anger now, not the smooth tone from the funeral. Mom started crying loudly, saying I had turned Grandma against them, that I was cruel for keeping family money from them after all they had suffered. I looked at them both and felt something break and heal at the same time. My voice stayed calm, the way Grandma taught me when facing hard truths. You dumped me at 8 years old because I was inconvenient. You never paid a single bill, never showed up for a single birthday. Grandma gave me love when you gave me silence. This money isn't about revenge. It's about what she wanted. And she wanted it to go to the person who stayed. The lawyer quietly reminded them that contesting would be expensive and likely unsuccessful given the documentation. Multiple witnesses, the letter, and Grandma's clear mental capacity until the end. My parents left that office looking smaller somehow. Shoulders slumped, the weight of years of choices pressing down on them. Word traveled further. A few distant cousins who had never bothered to call suddenly reached out. But most people in town simply nodded at me with quiet respect. The local paper even ran a small respectful piece about Grandma's life and legacy, without naming the family conflict. But everyone knew. In the weeks that followed, I didn't gloat. I felt no joy in their discomfort. Only a deep, tired sadness for the family we never got to be. I sold nothing at first. Instead, I kept living in the old house, fixing the creaky floors, planting lavender in the garden the way Grandma liked. Some of the money I quietly set aside for a scholarship fund in her name at the local community college, the same one I attended, so other kids who felt abandoned could get a chance. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because carrying 33 years of being unwanted deserved gentle unpacking. Healing didn't come in one big moment. It came in small ones. The first morning I woke up without that heavy stone in my chest. The afternoon I laughed genuinely with neighbors over coffee. The evening I sat on the porch and realized the fireflies still danced the same way. I forgave my parents, not for their sake but for mine. I sent them a short letter saying I wished things had been different, but I would not be part of their pattern anymore. They never replied. Last I heard, they had moved to another state, still chasing easy money that never seemed to arrive. Grandma's love had always been the real inheritance. The money was just the tool she used to protect it. Looking back now, I understand that some parents don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because loving you properly was too hard for them. But that doesn't mean you have to carry their failure forever. You can build something steady and true with whatever pieces you're given. If you've ever been abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect you, or watched someone try to steal what wasn't theirs at the worst possible moment, I want you to know this: your worth was never in their hands. You are allowed to protect your peace, honor the ones who stayed, and still choose kindness for yourself. Would you have fought to protect what your loved one truly wanted, even when it meant facing the family that hurt you? Or would you have let it go for the sake of peace? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you for listening to my story on Broken Trust Stories. If it touched something in your heart, consider subscribing and sharing with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Take care of yourselves out there.